First of all, can I say that I'm not high, but you're starting to really like the mask is separating, and it looks like a wise bird is speaking through a blue beak, and I'm really digging your bird vibe.
Yeah, kind of. Hello, the Sonic City Council is now in session. Thank you again, citizens, for tuning in. What up, Davey Sipes?
What up, Jesse? How you doing, man?
I'm good. How you doing?
I'm doing okay. I'm glad to be back with you, and I'm looking at some meat bags, and I like what I see.
Oh, my. You know what else I'm looking at? This gavel.
It's made of wood.
Call an order!
Okay. What if that thing was made out of marshmallows?
What if Gavel was one of us? Just a slob like one of us.
Just a stranger on the bus.
Trying to find his way home.
Trying to fuck his way home?
I said find.
Oh, I heard fuck.
Okay, let's get this out of the way. We've got these funny things on our face for a couple reasons, and sometimes it's a little bit harder to understand what people say when you got these thingadings on.
Are you talking about my beard braid, or are you talking about the...
Yeah, I was talking about your facial hair specifically, actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's kind of bluish, and it's got a little plastic piece on it today.
Yep, I'm out there, baby. What can I say?
Yeah,
Keeping it looking weird.
You're very out there. Real quick, you know, we're
2 seconds.
Podcast listener, citizen.
Shut up, sit down. Here it goes. Tell him.
Meatbag, as you call them.
Gentle meatbag of night.
Yes, gentle meatbag. Listening to this podcast, gentle meatbag.
You saying I lost my shit.
Yeah, who I am gently caressing your ear right now. If you're listening to this in headphones, gentle meatbag. God, can't stand you. We want to get this out of the way just because we want to keep this, relatively lighthearted and fun. We're in the Antelope Valley area of Southern California in the high desert, and that's in LA County.
They said lighthearted.
Well, I'm getting there,
okay,
man.
Okay, fine.
It just back off.
You start with the sad part. We were raised in the Antelope Valley.
Well, we're wearing these because COVID's in cases and numbers and all that, and a couple of reasons. Here's bullet point. Hey, fuck the long lecture. Here's the bullet points. Don't want to be a dick. Want to respect the people that got to wear masks. We both, are around other family members that are elderly, and
we got high risk people in our lives.
Yeah, and it's like when the cases were relatively lower and we weren't hanging out with people and things, were relatively okay. We felt comfortable doing this without masks, and we were going about things safely and taking precautions and things like that.
For a time, we were raw dogging it.
Yeah, and we are still taking precautions and keeping each other updated on people we're seeing and just, going in all the different precautions we're taking. But now this is just an extra layer of not having to lose our peace of mind about doing this. And also me not feeling like a dick about, we're getting together to do this podcast, even though there is no live audience here and there's no laugh track like we're on The Price is Right. Even though that's a live audience, I don't know. TV shows. You know what I'm saying, Dave.
Wow, yeah. No, I caught up at the end there. But I think that I think almost everybody's already clued into what you're trying to say about what we're trying to do vis-a-vis the masks. It's just it's just part of doing your good turn, and we're still gonna do it. Yeah, we always do our temperature checks and all that BS before we start an episode, but we're it's a little bit more prevalent, and we live in a pretty densely populated area, more or less, being in LA County. So we thought, hey, we still want to bring you all of the goodness of our presence, but we're gonna do it safely and mysteriously.
Yeah.
Because you already forgot what I look like. You can't see all of the weird zits that are occurring now that I'm all moist under a mask.
You are Batman.
What?
Sorry, I saw the pin. I had to get the dad joke.
Where is she?
It's next to your.
Is it under my chin or something?
Yeah, to the left of your chin.
Yeah, these are my merit badges.
Yeah. So anyway,
yeah.
I don't want to dwell on that. And anybody who's listening to this, it's like you get a whole day full of that and pretty much every other piece of content.
But you want to talk about COVID?
Well, this is not a news update. This is us getting together, and we didn't want to stop doing the podcast, so this is something we feel like is an extra precaution that we can take. You guys get to still get the council meetings each week, which you're
still getting served.
Yes.
You like that.
Yes. And again, we thank you for tuning in. And if you're tuning into this, we hope that you take the ride with us, with or without the bumping the microphone, whole face covering thing that we got going on here.
If you're only here because of how good we look without the mask on, you just need to take a step back and reflect about like, hey, our bodies are just one part of who we are as people. Okay.
If you can handle,
not just us, but you too.
Yeah. If you can handle my awkward hand gestures and posture on a weekly basis, this is like not too much. If you've hung in there through this, and whatever I'm doing with my legs, then I think the mask is like the least of everybody's concern at this point.
Exactly.
Exactly. I feel the same way.
I
have to look at it every time we record, and it makes me nauseous.
It's not that bad. It can't be that bad.
No. I mean, I don't know. It depends on who you ask.
I don't ask anybody. Nobody's opinion matters.
Right.
Not even ours.
It's
a singularity coming, so it's only going to be one big ass opinion, and it's all going to be the same, baby.
Well, I have one opinion that I admire.
I have one.
It is of our guest this week,
Segway Master strikes again.
Our guest this week is the incredibly
awesome.
Beautiful?
I'm trying to say beautiful.
I'm trying to think of the words to describe how cool this guy is. He's Luis Flores, who is a mixing engineer out of Los Angeles, California, and he works at the home studio of Linda Perry, and basically he has gotten into the engineering scene of things and is either mixing or being an assistant engineer for all of these different artists. If you do a deep dive into his IG, I thought we added sound effects.
I heard the Mandalorian in the background.
Maximum Max Taylor, one shout out per episode as per FDA regulated guidelines. We thank him so much for engineering this podcast.
And it's over.
What? You're so good though that it doesn't matter. But so, and this ties in too because Max and Luis have been friends for a long time, and that's how I first met him. I don't know, 6-7 years ago at this point, 8 maybe. I don't know. It's been a while. And you've known him for
many
a long
moons
time
have
too.
passed.
Yeah,
yes.
many moons have passed.
Indeed.
So he's got a great breadth of experience with mixing, engineering, working with high-profile artists. If you do a deep dive on his IG page, you can find pictures of him with Bono and John Legend, and he's done some work with Dolly Parton, tons of people across all sorts of genres. And he's got such a wealth of knowledge, but he's also just such a great guy to hang out and talk with. Anytime I've gotten a chance to hang out and talk with him in person, it's been awesome.
Yeah, he's a wonderful dude, super talented. Love jamming with him. Such a guitarist.
Oh, man.
He's all around wunderkind, as we say in the old country.
Wunderkind, yes.
In Puerto Rico, we say that.
Do they?
No.
You need to
Birdman.
You're digging these traps for me to fall into, and it hurts.
No, we specifically put those in the floor for you because of the height displacement, because of how long your legs are.
It's okay. I'll have my own sarcastic punji pit that I will lead you into. Later.
I have lots of soft meat. I'm ready. That sounded weird, even for me.
I mean, there also.
I do have lots of soft meat, fam.
For the ratio, we're 1-to-1 awkward hand gestures and things sounding weird at this point, but that's just how it be.
Yeah, for you it's in the hands, and for me it's in the mouth. And that's what we said.
Speaking of sounding weird, let's add to that list.
Yeah, why not?
Anyway,
we are professional.
Let's get to it.
Let's get to it.
Luis, thank you so much for joining us today, man. We appreciate you coming on here.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
It's going to be a good time.
Yeah, man. It's
Hell yeah.
the last time I think we all saw you, and just a little bit of backstory for the listener. I don't know how long you've known Luis, but I've known him for a little, I'd say a while now through Max, and Max, our engineer, and yourself have been friends for a long time. So, yeah, the last time we all hung out, I think, was January at NAMM, and got to kind of eat and catch up on things, and which
That's
feels
right.
like another lifetime ago, but
That was
Right?
like 3 years ago.
yeah, yeah, I was gonna say that was 3 years ago last
It
January.
really feels like him.
Yeah.
That was still this fucking year, dude.
Yeah, so it's just good to see you, man. Catch up. It's awesome.
Absolutely.
Cool. Well, so we were talking about this a little bit before we started recording. Your main thing is you've been an assistant engineer and you're living in the recording world, but just now with the pandemic, you haven't really been slowing down, and you've been really sticking to that, and kind of just really been in that world even more so now.
Yeah, I mean, it's great because in the studio that I work at, which is here, it's very easy to stay isolated. We have a lot of rooms that we can record in. They have their own doors. Like, for example, right here in front of me is a booth with its own entrance, glass, all isolated. You know, you can have... Mostly it's been singers coming in and singing in that booth and then leaving through the same door, and we never are in the same room at any point. But
Yeah.
I have... For one thing, where we did need a full band, we could obviously not do a full band live like we usually do. But, you know, set up the drums one day, the drummer comes in that room, plays the drums, goes, take it down, set up for bass and guitar, have him come in one at a time, you know, and just kind of keeping everybody isolated. But mostly it's been, the work is still going, but it's, you know, lonely.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
Not like it used to be where you could have a full band in here and everybody's hanging out and having a good time.
Right,
That's
kicking it.
kind of over.
yeah. No, and that is a bummer with everything going on right now.
Has work slowed down significantly, though? In terms of having projects to work on, or?
Well, it slowed down for a little, let's say like March through May.
Mm-hmm.
Then it picked up again. And then now the last like 3 weeks and probably the rest of this month have been pretty slow. I mean, I'm still working every day, but it's, you know, half days.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Me and my boss, Linda, we're trying to be really careful. So a lot of the times we just overlap. She comes in, does a bunch of stuff. And then once she leaves, then I come in and do what I have to do.
Right. Yeah.
So it's been interesting in that way.
Yeah, and that's a pretty smart
Tough.
precaution since you guys do work with a lot of people. You're meeting a lot of people. It's better to be kind of safe than sorry, I guess, in that regard.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, for your client's sake and your sake. And you kind of touched on this a little bit just a second ago with having that environment when you're having a lot of musicians come through and all different types of people. Like, can you talk a little bit about the environment you're in your studio and kind of the camaraderie that you would normally be experiencing, and like kind of give a picture of what it's like working there?
Yeah, sure. Well, we definitely have... it's a large format studio that is in a house. So it's a home studio, kind of, but it's the nicest home studio you'll see. Nobody lives here. The entire house is converted into a studio.
Awesome.
And we have, you know, our go-to guys that we use for sessions. So a lot of the time it's, you know, the same people coming through. But, you know, it used to be where you would have musicians in here weekly, you know, different drummers for different things, depending on the feel, you know, if it's going to be like a country thing, we called, you know, blah, blah, blah. But if it's going to be a more urban thing, we call blah, blah, blah. But mostly speaking, it's the same crew. And I've been missing everybody, man. It's been... That's what's been hitting the hardest. It's not necessarily the workload, but the just having to do it all alone.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, I feel you on that just with the live side of things. You know, I've had a few maintenance sort of calls and other smaller things with limited people, but it's missing the camaraderie of like everybody on the crew like working together is, you know, that's something that's been hard to adjust to.
Yeah, and it's like, you know, or when I do get to see them, it's like, okay, I'm in this room, you're in that room.
Right.
Yeah.
You get in and get out as fast as you can. You know?
Right.
can't hang out, can't go have lunch, can't,
Right.
even if we take a break, it's like, hey, how's it going over
How's it
there?
going
Yeah.
there?
Good to see you. Hey, yeah, all right, bye.
Yeah, lots of hand gestures and shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's it's I guess as much as that sucks, there is you have to be grateful for a part of that, and like at least I'm still getting to be around these people and see these people. So
absolutely.
yeah. So I kind of wanted to get the backstory, and well, real quick, how long have you known Luis? Because
My memory's not really good, but if I had to venture a guess, I mean, we met, more than 6 or 7 years ago for
Okay.
sure.
Something like that.
Back when there was a certain musical project in the world, and
Right.
that involved him and Mr. Maxwell there. But yeah, I think I've known him for at least that long, and then we hung out more in the last couple years, more recently actually than any other time. Because now that I'm like attached to Max at the hip, we go down and bug him down at his place sometimes. And it's a good hang, and that's about it though. I think
oh, well,
about 7 years. 8 years
okay,
maybe.
cool. Well, because
Have you known him longer?
I think
Competitive man.
we did a gig. I was gonna say we played a gig together. I want to say it was about 2012, and it was at Molly Malone's. And
That long ago?
Wow, that's funny.
I think that's when it was 2012, 2013, and Max played drums, and Max's friend Aaron played keys, and then Lewis was playing guitar, and
Lewis
yeah.
plays some guitar, goddamn.
Yeah, and I was gonna say it was for what would later become Terror Jr.
Hey.
Yeah, that was sort of the introductory showcase.
That's right.
Gig. I'm saying Terror Jr. because that's her artist
Bearing the
name
lead,
now.
isn't
but
it?
Yeah.
yeah, but when she first came to LA, Max was playing drums and he asked me to play bass for this, and it was kind of like a showcase gig, and yeah, just kind of kept in touch with Lewis off and on ever since, and occasionally hit him up for like, hey, I've got this like project idea, and like I know you're a big Ween fan, and so I think I was toying with the idea of taking my first red guitar that was a Yamaha just like knockoff Strat, and like I think I'm gonna turn that into like my Ween Stratocaster, which is still a project that I want to do, and like copy the pickup configuration and kind of like maybe try to like wear it down and make it look worn, and like basically do the Dean Ween Strat. So and
What's
I was
up
like,
with his guitar?
it's basically a 60s Strat that's barely able to be called a 60s Strat anymore because he's modified it and changed it so much and swapped pickups, and I think
Okay.
the only thing 60s about it is the body. He's changed the neck, like
Yeah, he's
the
changed
bridge.
everything.
Yeah, it's a Frankenstein.
I love it.
Yeah. But yeah, so going back to that, like even though I've known you for a while, I've never actually been able to get your story on sort of how you got involved in recording. And also, I know that, are you from Venezuela originally, or were you born in the United
Yes.
States?
No, I'm from Venezuela, but
Okay.
I've been here longer than I was there.
Okay. So if you wanted to talk about, like, sort of how you came to the States and how you got into the recording
Your whole
business.
biography, yeah.
Well, coming to the States, I was basically a child, and my mom moved to the States. So I
Okay.
came along. But then around the time I was like, let's say 17, almost 18, she decided she didn't like the U.S., didn't want to live here. And she went back to Venezuela. And my younger sister had to go with her because she was too long. But I was just kind of like, I don't know about that.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I had the opportunity to stay, so I did, and I was going to go to college, and I wanted to do classical guitar at the time. That was what I wanted to do. So I moved to California. Then I was here, started going to, school, classical guitar. I was mainly just that, that's what I wanted. My dad is a crazy musician, and so it's everyone in my family. And so as a kid, I didn't want to do music.
Yeah.
Oh,
just like
sure.
Anything to not be like my dad, basically. And like,
Rebellious.
and
Yeah. Oh.
and rebellious, exactly. So I was just like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna do photography. I'm gonna do visual arts, which I suck at. It's just like
Same.
That's
Same.
such a
same,
bad
same, dude.
idea. And so I
Right on.
fought it, and then I got an album by John Williams, the guitar player, not the
Yeah.
not the composer.
Yep.
Where it was a full record of only Venezuelan classical guitar repertoire,
Whoa.
and it changed my life. Like I heard it, and I was just like, I don't care what I do. I want to play guitar like that. So started going to school. But you're in music school, you're jamming, you make friends, and so started joining bands.
Yeah.
And then I met Tyler Davis, who I don't know if you guys know. Max knows Tyler.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I met Tyler, and at the time, Tyler's mom was in real estate, and I don't really understand the situation of how this came to be, but her company owned this house in the hills of Tahanga that was unoccupied, and she would essentially let me and Tyler just go in there and record. And so he was already super into recording and engineering. He had the mics, he had all the stuff, and so I was just basically crashing in there, trying to pick up as much as I could. And he's really the one that got me started in my journey on, getting into recording and engineering. Eventually, I dropped out of school for multiple reasons.
Where were you going for classical?
I was going to PCC, actually.
Okay.
Nice.
Because there was a teacher there, Kai Naredzo, who teaches flamenco.
I know Kai.
You know Kai? Yeah.
He teaches at Dominguez too.
Yeah.
That's where
And
I
so
went for my classical. So
I wanted to
Kai's
learn.
awesome.
I wanted to study with Kai. So
Yeah, it makes
that's
sense.
why I picked PCC.
he is a bad dude.
Yeah.
Super nice guy too.
Yeah. And one of the best teachers, too.
Yeah, he's a fucking great teacher. So easy to
As
talk
an
to.
as a player, he's insane, but as an educator, too.
Yeah.
Which flamenco is really just spoken word tradition, but he has a way of making you understand it, where you actually understand it without just having to been born in Spain and listened into it since you were a child.
Right.
Which is the only other way.
Yeah. So he's great. But that's why I was there. And then my problem was more with I don't know, classical music. It's just so elitist and gatekeeping. It's just
I've
love
encountered
listening.
that too, but in what way did you feel it the most? Was it in a playing situation or in obviously not a situation with Kai, but was there a faculty or what was the inciting incident for you with that?
It was the program itself.
Sure.
It was just I enjoy Baroque music. I enjoy Bach as a music appreciator, but can I swear in this podcast?
A little bit,
Yeah.
but watch yourself, counselor.
I hate playing it. I just can't stand sitting there
You didn't
for
swear.
hours and hours and hours practicing, the same arpeggio over 1,000 different chords. It's just not what I wanted to do.
So you're not a Bach prelude kind of guy, would you say?
No.
Fair enough.
No, never got through one. And so that became a problem.
Yeah.
And
They're challenging because they're frustrating in that way. They're limited.
yeah, and you have to
musically.
have the desire to get through them, and I didn't. I wanted to play early 1900s South American composers. That's what I wanted to learn. That's why I started that journey, and that's where I wanted to be. And there was a disconnect between what they were making me do versus where I wanted to get to, and I didn't feel like it was getting me there. And I thought that I was better off alone.
Okay.
And it's worked out. I still play classical every day. I'm able to play a lot of the material from that John Williams record that got me started.
Yeah, baby.
Not as well as he does, but I get through it.
Yeah.
And still play flamenco. And, it was just a waste of time for me. For me, the basics that I got, the theory, harmony, ear training, and reading, once I got those basics down, I didn't want to keep participating in that. And so at that time, I started working construction, which is not fun. I mean, it is
Every
fun in a
guitarist
way,
should go
but
out and work construction.
Yeah.
Hey, I actually had a lot of time to practice because my days were 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. and then I had the rest of the day to practice whatever
that's
I
something
wanted.
to think about.
You know?
Fucking A.
And I was making good money. And so I did that for a while in different bands, you know, with Max and all this other stuff, having fun, learning more about recording. And then eventually, years later, I was just like, I don't want to do construction anymore. I want to focus on music, you know? And so I started working at Guitar Center, which was great. It was great.
You
Yeah,
paused
and, you know,
for a beat.
Yeah.
and everybody always says like, "Oh, I'm gonna work at Guitar Center for 1 or 2 years, and then I'm gonna get a better job in music out of that." And that never happens. But for me, it actually happened.
Oh, okay. The rarity.
Because, yeah,
Seriously.
there, my coworker Dash, who I love, he was the first one to get a job engineering for Linda. And I'm not exactly sure on the story on how that happened. I think they knew each other because he used to be in a band when he was younger that she liked or something like that. They knew each other somehow. So he was the first one to start working for Linda. And then about 6 to 9 months after he left Guitar Center, he called me up and he's like, "Hey, she's hiring more assistants. Do you want to interview?" And I was just like, "Yes."
Yeah.
And she liked me. And so then quit Guitar Center, and I've been with her for 7, 8 years.
Wow. Yeah, I was going to say it's coming up on a while that you've had that gig. And
Yeah.
to your credit and hers, I would think it's you hear about in a lot of aspects of the music industry, there could be a lot of changeover sometimes, or there could be just fluctuation, or you're not able to keep the same people around because of just whatever it is, financial, personal reasons, whatever. But the fact that you've had the gig as long as you've had is like an amazing thing, you know, and that's been steady for you. It's really awesome.
Yeah, I love it. I love where I am. I love working for her. She's a freaking genius.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I've learned so much.
Yeah.
And it's been a wild ride. It's been crazy, but I love it. I love where I am, and yeah, I think that's part of it too. You know, like when it's such a small team, if you don't have that chemistry, then it's not gonna work out.
Right.
And you know, for some people, it might take you 2 years to find out if it's gonna work out or not, because you know, it's like if I wasn't here and somebody else came into my position, they would have to spend so much time learning her particularities. You know, the things that the way she wants things done.
Yeah.
And then after you get through that, maybe it still won't work out, you know?
Right.
Right.
There's a lot of considerations that go with that. And I mean, coming from the live side of things, it's simple stuff like, you know, obviously there's the gear preferences of like, this is how this person wants their amp set up, and like, this is you know, where they want it EQ'd. This is where they want their action on their guitars. This is how they like their drums tuned. That's all the sort of basic stuff. When you get into the specifics, when you really want to knock those things out of the park, you look at like, oh, like, do I need to make sure that they have like stage towels handy? You know, what temperature do they want their water at if they're a singer? Like, do they always have a beer on the drum riser that they can just take a sip on during the set? Like, all these little things that like you're aware of, and you like learn their pet peeves or things they like. And so that way it's not just a matter of you set up the gear right. It's a matter of, like you said, you know, the particulars. And I imagine even in a studio environment, it's like that too, that you know all these little things about Linda that she likes, and you can knock those things out of the park.
It's definitely the attention to detail that gets you through. You know, it's very important. And also, you know, being fluid. I feel like a lot of engineers get stuck in like how they do things.
Yeah.
You know? Like I don't know, like gain staging. Like she might come in one day and just like put a microphone on the bass amp and just fucking and it sounds amazing, and it's just like, you know, and you look at it and Pro Tools is clipping, and it's like if you start thinking about it too much, you know, it's wrong or whatever, but it's not. It sounds fantastic, and that's all about it really matters is, you know, what comes out of the speakers. And I've had to get used to that and used to preferences changing. For example, when I first started with her for the first 3 or 4 years, it was U47 for her vocals every time. Now it's a U87, SM7 sometimes.
Okay.
Because it's changed. You know, it's just it changed, or you know, you can't.
We're talking microphones for everybody out there.
Yeah.
I had to
It's
do
just
that for my
microphone
besties.
preference
Fred,
for
we're
your
talking
voice.
microphones.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just, you know, you like this way for a while, but now I like this. And so, we never do the same drum sound twice.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So it's just, you gotta just be used to, or she might say, hey, we got, a rock band tomorrow, get me this drum sound. And, you spend all day setting it up. And then, she's the producer. She walks in and she goes, yeah, good, but let's put these mics over here. Let's move this, change that out. I don't like that. Move it, or mute it, or whatever. And you can't really have an ego about that.
No.
You can't just be like, oh, that's my drum sound. Don't touch it. Like, it's just
Right. Yeah. Well, and to your, I would think for your perspective too, that's super beneficial because you're getting thrown curveballs or challenges or questions that you have to answer, and
constantly.
And if you can do that, you're sharpening your sword every day in the sense of like your steel sharpens steel is the expression that I'm alluding to. It's like
Sounds good.
Yeah, and it's if she's asking you to do unconventional things with your sound that you may have never thought about, you could take that and apply it to any session you do in the future, having gone through those experiences.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. I want to know, just for my own curiosity, like, do you have any really good stories of like either something that she was after sonically or a moment in the studio where you got thrown a total curveball and then you ended up getting something great out of it because it forced you to think outside of the box? If there's any specific ones you can remember.
Well, two answers. There was one time where we had a piece of equipment break in the middle of a session. It was an Echoplex, like an old tape Echoplex.
Yeah.
And it just broke in the best way possible. And now it has this just like weird tone. Like it just has this weirdness to it, but it kind of works. And so it stayed like that for the last 3 years because it's like, don't touch it, don't fix it, because it's just so unique. I don't know how to explain it. It's this like crazy, chorusy, warble thing that it does now that's just so cool that it's just like, okay, well, it's technically broken and not operating the way it should, but like it, so keep it that way.
Yeah.
Dude, I already want to hear it by the description alone.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's cool.
It's great. We've done, I don't know, there's so many weird little things. Reversing and stand speakers. So you can grab an in a stand speaker, just a speaker, and wire it in reverse to turn it into a microphone.
Okay.
What?
Yeah, because the cone of the speaker acts like the capsule.
Right.
But, a capsule is very sensitive.
Mm-hmm.
The speaker is not nearly as sensitive, so to actually make it move, it has to be something loud and bassy.
Yeah.
So
that could be.
We use that thing in so many weird, like stick it in the fireplace, because remember, this is a house.
Yeah, right.
Put it in front of the kick drum, facing the floor. So you get underneath the floorboards. That.
Wow.
Or just like put it in the corner and just like slam it with compression and see what happens.
Oh, man.
Lately, I've been keeping one in the bass amp at all times.
Man, that's
fucking cool.
Yeah, that's so cool. I was just thinking that would make a great sub kick, if you wanted to.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That was my first thought.
Yeah.
Oh, dude,
it's great.
Yeah, that's the best. And like, I don't know. Every time I hear engineers talking about coming up with techniques like that or interesting ways of miking stuff or using expertise, it's so inspiring, even I think on your own, to want to explore sounds and think outside of the box about tone and what this means. And like, instead of looking at a studio monitor like you were talking about with engineering, that's what this is for, and it cannot be changed otherwise.
Right.
You're like, did you know that could be a microphone? Like,
That's
no,
far out, dude.
I didn't.
It can do the opposite job it was designed to do.
Yeah, that's incredible. Like, where does your creativity fit into that? Like, how much free reign are you given on? I mean, obviously, with some of these projects, you're the assistant engineer, so it might not be necessarily your role to do so. But do you find opportunities to exercise your own creativity in these sessions?
Absolutely. And I mean, one, she's very open I mean, at this point, we've been working for so long that she trusts me in my opinions. So
Right.
if I say, oh, well, let's try this mic over here, she'll be like, hell yeah, let's try that.
Yeah.
Or even if I say, hey, I don't think that sounds good, she will trust me on it,
Yeah.
and she'll
That's good.
appreciate it. But I think it's a lot of knowing when. Sometimes we're working on something and she's in total control and I'm just there to assist, and it's just like, keep it moving forward, problem solving, don't get in the way, and then don't touch it, right?
Right.
And there's other times where, she'll just look at me and say, okay, mix it.
Huh.
And when that happens, then I have full creative control of what I want to do.
Oh, that's great.
Wow.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of context, but there's a lot of range in that kind of working relationship you guys have going in terms of what you can contribute. That's really great.
It's when you get the creative control that is the scariest.
Scariest? Speak on that.
Well, because when you're a team with someone, you're reinforcing each other.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like being in a band. Everybody's in agreement that this is a good song, so it must be. Versus you alone trying to make that decision by yourself.
Right.
So, when you're mixing something by yourself, it's the best mix you've ever done until you hit send. And then it's the worst mix you've ever done.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then,
So true.
Yeah.
Then you're like, oh my God, why did I send that? But it's always good. But,
Yeah. Well,
when it fully falls on you and you alone, it can be scary.
yeah.
Sure.
That's where I feel like when there's that disconnect between artists and engineers, whatever it is, not necessarily recording, but just I've seen it with live sound engineers, just because artists don't know about that. There's this thing of like, you kind of forget that like engineers are creative people too, as much as you're a master of like the technical side of things and how all of the gear relates to each other and how to get good tone, how to EQ, all the technical things you need. You still have those creative doubts about like your mix and like, oh man, is this the worst mix I've ever done? In the same way, if somebody records a take or a song and everybody goes, you nailed it, and you're like, no, there was that one little thing in the verse or the chorus, or you can be equally nitpicky and self-conscious about your work.
And it's equally
so
as
tough.
subjective.
Yeah, it is. Absolutely.
It is, because you're talking about EQ, so I'm gonna EQ your vocal, something that I would do that to me sounds fantastic.
Yes.
It may not sound fantastic to the next guy or the artist himself,
Yeah.
So you do have to be creative in that aspect. I think where the creative also comes into play is when you're running into issues
Yes.
or when somebody doesn't like something. It's like, to compare it to music, if you do a guitar solo and the producer is like, I don't like that solo, do something else. How capable of just switching on the spot and just doing something else completely different are you? Being able to improvise with technology, because when you're an engineer, it's like, I don't like that drum sound, gotta get a different drum sound. What do you do,
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
Right. It sounds 10 times more confusing than figuring out that solo. That's why I could never engineer, man. It's like,
Yeah, and it's about shortening your reaction time. So like
Okay.
he's saying that somebody's saying, I don't like this solo, change it, and so you don't have time to go, oh, I'm going to go take this home and craft it. And it's kind of like if you're a session player, you're trying to do it on the spot. So
Yeah.
you have to have ideas coming to you. And it's the same thing in an engineering aspect. It's like,
Exactly.
if the-
well, yeah, but it's even harder because y'all have to have technical know-how and
Right.
then express the ideas. I'm like, ideas I got.
yeah,
Technical know-how, I can't do shit. That's like, that's where the
It depends on the
challenge is,
person
bro.
you are, though. I feel more comfortable getting a new drum set on the spot than writing a new guitar solo.
Yeah.
Fair enough,
like-
brother.
And it's like, let's say you do take that song home and you work it out, at your house, and then you come back the next day, you spent hours writing this solo, and then you play it, and they're like, no, not that.
Yeah.
And now you're like married to this thing that's just like in your
That
head,
has
and it's
happened.
hard to get out
Yeah.
of. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so-
That's a super challenging thing. And also, and I don't know how beholden you are to this, but it's, let's say you create something and it's done,
Done.
We've had other engineers on this podcast. One of whom is a mastering engineer out of Nashville named Raylan Janicki, and she works at Infrasonic Mastering with Pete Lyman. And they've both talked about in different interviews and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
They deal with the struggles of not just trying to get the artist happy with what they like, but there's also potentially like record labels and producers and management. There's a whole group of people that want to say on how this ends up sounding, particularly in the mastering world, because there's the make it louder sort of debate. And so do you have to contend with that at all outside of the artist demands? Like, are you dealing with like what labels want it to sound like or with anything like that?
No,
Okay.
luckily. Because, it's different. Let's say, I don't know, I'll just, I don't know. You have, the Beatles in your studio, right?
Yeah, right.
And you're helping them record their songs. It's a very creative process. More likely than not, the label is not there telling the Beatles what songs to write. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're going to write their album, they're going to record it, and then they're going to present it to their label.
Yeah.
And that's when all of those discussions start happening. Rarely have I have never had a label person in the studio while I'm here, or have a label person give me feedback on anything for any of the artists I've worked with.
Okay.
Well, that's a relief.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I've heard people talk about that, and it's kind of
Yeah.
it is this weird challenge of not just the creative balance and the technical, but it's also a business thing for some engineers, because especially in stuff that could be more pop, it's kind of like you're supposed to tailor you're supposed to tailor everything to the sound that's happening right now, and it's like, yeah, but then maybe that's not what this thing is,
Yeah. My girlfriend has had more issues with that, where she will turn things to her label and they'll be like, I don't think this is commercially viable.
Yeah. Yeah.
What does that mean?
Yeah. And
In that case, they're talking about the material versus its production, usually, or both. Or
I suppose. Yeah, it's
Okay.
more about the material itself.
yeah,
yeah.
as if they know what the fuck they're talking about.
Well-
Sorry, labels, but
well,
you don't know what the fuck you're
it's-
talking about.
It's so interesting because I know people in all sorts of aspects of things where some people are beholden to that and they have
Yeah.
to follow that. Other people I know have a really, successful following and they release stuff on their own and they don't have to, they're not necessarily in the same sort of commercial world, but they have a following that sustains them and they don't have
Yeah.
to make those decisions. And so it's just, it's a weird thing of having to balance all of that. And also you have to think about how many times in history has something maybe not fit the conventional mold of what a production sounds like or musically is written, but then goes on to do something really great and build this whole
Exactly.
new thing. And so where's the room for growth in all of that?
And
That's what... Oh, go ahead.
I was just like, it blows my mind. Like, why do we do this with music and not other fucking media? It's like, why do we have to have like that thing where, there's a current pop sound, so like the artists that are popular right now are gonna have very similar sounding songs and styles and shit. If that happened with fucking like movies, people would be like, I don't want to see this shit. If you did Lord
Yeah.
of the Rings
Yeah.
and that was like a fucking hot, like
Yeah.
for 6 months, every movie was Lord of the Rings Redux because that's what's hot right now. You got to sell it while it's hot.
Right.
People would fucking riot, bro. They'd be like, I don't want this bullshit. I already watched those.
Yeah.
They only do it to us with music, and any ideas? Why?
I don't know.
It just
know.
drives
I
me
don't
sorry.
know.
It's
Yeah.
completely
But it's just-
tangent, but
It's ridiculous. It's like, for example, like Billie Eilish, right?
Yeah.
She comes out, she's got her thing, she's got her sound. There wasn't another sound like her before.
Right.
She blows up,
nothing.
She wasn't following someone else. She wasn't imitating someone else, and that's the reason it was so successful.
Right.
However, after it becomes successful, then you have all these people who are trying to sound like Billie Eilish
Yeah.
because it's the it sound right now, and it's just like, why? There's already a Billie Eilish.
Right.
Like,
Right.
And her
You gotta
sound is
dig
so
deep.
specific. It's so obvious when you're trying. When it's just the obvious.
when you're
ripoff, I
trying to
feel like,
imitate,
you
it's
know?
obvious to me, and
Yeah.
it's not authentic. It's not great.
Yeah, being authentically inspired and having something sort of naturally come up in your music is different than just trying to imitate a sound. You can hear the difference because there'll be whispers of that in it, but it's not going to be all of that.
Absolutely.
There's a splash of milk in the coffee. This
There's a
is
dribble.
not. Yeah,
Drizzle of leche.
It can
Yeah.
be done. Influences are obviously influences,
Yeah.
and it can be done. But when it's like trying to like duplicated with a formula, that's where it loses its authenticity for me.
Yeah. Well, and that's like hearing your stories about working with Linda and like, hey, put this NS10 microphone in the fireplace. It's like, yes, dude, that is what it's about, because this is somebody who's been in the music business for a long time and has had so much experience that I feel like she's at the point now where she's has no qualms about taking those chances, because it's like that's where the excitement is.
Hopefully,
She also has the most insane ears I've ever encountered.
Yeah, talk a little bit about that if you can.
Well, engineering and production ear for one thing, but also musical ear. So she can have, like, I've seen this happen. She can have a 20-piece string section in front of her, and she will listen to them and just be like, no, behind him. You are out of tune. It's just like,
Whoa.
woo! Yeah. And she'll be, or it'll be a
awesome
string arrangement.
Toscanini
She's like,
shit,
there's a wrong note in there. No, there isn't. Yeah, no, there is. Okay. And she'll go, what are you playing? What are you playing? What are you playing? Well, what are you playing? What are you playing? Yeah, you do not play that note.
Yeah.
And she'll find that. Yeah. And she'll find that in there,
Yeah, that's incredible.
It's, and just her ears for just producing good sounds.
Right.
Just, and how to get them. She tries to manipulate as little as possible. She does it all with mic and placement and choices. So we'll go through 20 snares trying to get a drum sound. That's also, the privilege of having 20 snares
Yeah.
at hand. We'll go through 20 snares. And to me, it starts getting to the point where I don't hear the difference anymore,
Mm.
And and I'm just like, well, that's a good snare. Well, that snare sounds great. Well, that snare sounds great. No. And then eventually she'll be like, yeah, this snare. And you know what? It was better than than the other 20.
Yep.
And she knew what she wanted in her mind, and she found it. And a lot of other people would have stopped searching an hour and a half ago.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, right.
And just picked one of the other 10 great snares that she would go through. But I found that every time she starts chasing something like that, it's worth to follow it through.
Yep.
Cool.
Yeah. And I think it is a matter of like, it's not for people that aren't into the recording world. It's not that those different snares don't sound great objectively on their own, but it's about in the context and the details of that piece. Like, what is the flavor that best complements these other ingredients?
That's what I've learned the most, is that emotion and feeling are more important than any technicality.
Absolutely.
It's about how it hits you inside, and not necessarily whether it's properly recorded or, oh, I wouldn't put that mic that close to the, whatever. Like, it's not, she doesn't think about it that way. Never.
Right. The technical
always
is
about.
just, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no. I was saying it's all about emotion. It's all about, the feeling of the song and the vibe.
Yeah. The technical is just there to make sure that the emotion is better translated, that you don't lose any of that
Ooh,
emotion.
well said.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's just a tool to capture that emotion.
Yeah, because you don't want a situation where you could have been more technically prepared, just in general, like not specifically with who you're working for, but just in general. You're going into a studio environment, you want to record like the next best, heaviest metal, like most aggressive album you possibly can. It's like, well, that's great. Beyond your playing and the tightness of that band, how do you do that? So you got to look at like, what does that mean in terms of guitar tone? Does that mean that I'm going to reamp this? Do I have an amp that, is going to sound good without reamping? Do you know what reamping is? Do you know like the best way to do that? Beyond that's just in the guitar world and like maybe bass world. Then with drums, it's like, okay, well, can you get the best metal sound on an organic kit? Depending on the style, you might be able to do that. So all things that when you sit down and look at it, you have to just pick apart like cooking, being that's the world that you're involved in. I say involved in that you've done it. I look at it like he's making stew over there.
He's making a gravy.
Yeah, you're making a gravy, and like, well, maybe you don't want it to be, a beef stock in there. Maybe you want something else. It's just
Well, it's got to have like a 4-meat base, or it's not a gravy. So, and it's that same sort of understanding. That's what you're talking about. Like I said something only barely technical in terms of the food product, but the emotion that it made me feel is the reality of the situation. I was like, if you do it any other way, it's not going to feel the same.
Right.
And that's what I think we're talking about here is the commonality.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, and
I'm hungry.
producing a super heavy metal record, the engineer is going to have to plug mics and EQ them and set them up much in the same way that you would if you were making a jazz record, right? It's the same tools.
Okay.
Microphones, cables, guitars, drums, But the guy who has the ear for metal, who feels it, who knows how it's supposed to sound at the end, while capable of plugging microphones in and EQing them, may not be the best person to make you a jazz record.
Right.
Even though it's
unless you want a weird fucking jazz record.
Unless you want a weird jazz record.
Yeah.
Exactly.
If you want a good ass normal one, go with jazz guy. Yeah.
Right.
Makes sense, dude.
Yeah. Well, and speaking about, artists and, different people that you're working with, I feel like because you can't really pin down Linda's style, I think that's also why you get such a wide variety of clientele and people that you're working with. And because like you have the ear that you do and you're coming from, your background and musicality and whoever else is working at the studio, I feel like for you guys, you can have such a wide variety of clientele coming through than maybe another environment would be able to have.
Yeah, absolutely. And you'll have sessions where it's all MIDI. It's just like dance or pop, it's all in the computer and samples and synths and this and that. And then, the next week it's like, okay, switch it all up. We're going to record country now.
Huh.
Yeah, that's cool. Right.
And it happens. And it definitely does happen like that.
Yeah. And just on a personal note, like, how do you feel your own personal taste has been changed or influenced over these 7 or 8 years? Ooh. Because I know that for me, when I started doing live sound, I had a very particular lane of stuff that I was listening to and started to expand that. But then hearing so many different genres from like night to night and show to show, I had my ear developed for just my own appreciation for things. And has that been the case for you where you wouldn't have necessarily listened to country otherwise, but now you have, you've grown to like it or your personal taste has changed?
Absolutely. And my writing has changed.
Oh, okay.
When I started working for Linda, it was all, Max knows, I was just all prog rock and weirdness and it had to be weird or I didn't want to listen to it. It had to be, it couldn't just be simple music.
Yeah.
But that's not what I record at work. It's country, it's pop, it's short songs, it's,
Right.
Mm-hmm. It's simple writing. Like, I remember one time, Linda's like playing this song that she wrote like in like years before I started working for her, and we're about to recut it, and we're trying to figure out the chords. And it's like, yeah, well, I think that's, a 5/7. And she turns to me and she goes, I did not use a 5/7 in my song. As if it was the devil.
Yeah, wow.
No jazz. I was just like, okay.
Right.
It's funny because we have a guitar player that comes in here a lot. His name is Eli, and he is incredible. And he's like a chameleon, You tell him you want Keith Richards and he does it, and you tell him you want Johnny Marr and he does it, and you tell him and he plays classical and he plays fucking gypsy jazz and he plays pedal steel and and he loves country.
Yeah.
And so one of the running jokes is that in all the sessions when he starts playing lead, when he starts doing more fills, the country kind of shows up,
Yeah, right.
And so she'll always be on the talkback just like, Eli, no country, no country for years. And then when we started working on the Dolly Parton record, and he like came in and was just like, all right, Eli, it's finally your day.
Hey.
Go all out.
Yeah.
Please
Yeah.
play all the country you want.
Remember all that chicken picking you were holding in?
That's
Now's your
right,
time
man.
to shine.
Let it out.
Time to
Eli.
let it out.
Hell yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. Well, and it's sometimes that unintentional flavor is, where you get some really great creations though. If like, if
Most interesting thing.
yeah, I don't know, maybe that little bit of chicken fried lead works where normally you wouldn't want it in there,
Absolutely.
Yeah. And actually, I'm glad you brought up the Dolly Parton thing because in doing some prep for this, I was scrolling through your Instagram and, seeing all the cool pictures of different people you've worked with and situations. You're dealing with, like I mentioned, a wide variety of artists and people
Yes.
who've had, years and years of music industry experience. And some of the top people in the business, and you're getting to be around this. I would say what, in general, not about any particular artist, what are some of the moments where you kind of pinch yourself and are the highlights of that? And then what are some of the things that kind of go against the expectations or the idea of what people think that environment is like or working with people of that caliber?
I'll say this. I feel like the bigger the name, the nicer they are.
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
It's almost
cool.
like I struggle more working with people who have found success in the last year
Yeah.
than people who have had success for 40 years.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's an interesting thing to watch, egos and stuff, because it's like, I don't know, like it's just like I always use, like, after working with Dolly, I'll talk about that for a second because she is just so incredibly nice
Yeah.
to everyone.
Yep.
It doesn't matter who you are.
Oh.
If you're
A
around
legend.
Dolly, she's going to lift you up. It's incredible to watch.
Yeah.
And so if Dolly Parton, a national treasure legend,
Right.
Couldn't have said it better.
Yeah. Perfect.
can be, nice to everyone she encounters, then you don't get to be an asshole to the engineer.
Yep.
That's a T-shirt. By God.
Yeah. I can't.
If Dolly Parton, national treasure, can be this nice to everyone, then you don't need to be
Yeah.
a fucking dick to the engineer.
Yeah, I
I mean,
cannot agree with that enough because and you have a more of a prestigious position about just, you're in a recording studio and you're more involved in their work. But I've seen situations like that where artists, they'll be nice to the people in their immediate circle, but anybody beyond that, they just treat people like shit. And
Again, rookie mistake.
Yeah.
I was like, he's not below the line. He works with Linda, stupids. It's like,
Well,
it just doesn't make sense.
But even the matter of I've seen it just being in a local crew situation where it's like,
Sure.
oh, you're just you just set up the the ride.
Yeah,
you
you're just
set up
a,
the stage.
you're
You
just a
do
stage
this.
hand. Don't
Yeah,
look
and
at
it's
me.
like, I also do. I've been in gig situations where I've been a stagehand, told people I was a guitar tech. They stop treating me like shit and they start talking to me like an equal. And it's like, well, you've been condescending to me all day up until I actually started talking to you, and now you're being nice.
now it's
to
too
me.
fucking late.
Well, right. And so I'll talk to you, but now I've got that in the back of my mind of
oh, you
when
had to
thought I was-
qualify me.
You know,
Got
it
it.
happens
and-
more. It
Oh.
happens more outside of here. Like if somebody's coming to Linda's studio to record with Linda Perry and they meet me,
Yeah.
it's a different dynamic.
Yep.
But it will happen a lot, like
Sure.
because also once you get into situations like this, there's also not anymore, but there was the social aspect of it. A lot of networking,
Yeah.
a lot of
Used to be we
shows,
socialized.
a lot of you have to go to this bar to meet with these people, blah, 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 and you meet people and you meet artists, and you meet other musicians. So you'll have the guy who, you meet at a party and he doesn't say a word to you. He's just standoffish. He's, above everything until he finds out that you work for Linda Perry. And then he
Right.
wants to be your best friend. And anytime that anyone's done that to me, I'm just like, nope, you messed up from the get-go. Sorry.
Yeah.
Like,
I'm
Yeah,
imagining
I wanna
so
be your
many
friend.
people right now too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, and that's something that I feel like you learn really early on. You know, it's just you don't know who knows people. You don't know who does what, who is connected to who. And so it's just general to be kind of nice and courteous just as a decent human being. But
Yeah, I mean,
it's
yeah,
in
well, you
general.
play yourself by being a fucking. You never. People's strengths are not something that are just readily visible to the eye. So why
Yeah.
prejudge them with when that's all you really had?
Yeah,
that's all you had to go on.
yeah, it's stupid. But there's a story that for starters, I've met a few people who have worked with Dolly just on like different shows and things, not even on a regular basis, but just done a show or whatever. Met her, same thing. Met her in passing or got to talk with her briefly. Everybody that I've heard who has a Dolly story is the exact same way. It's like couldn't be nicer. Super down to earth, humble. Like this was an amazing experience. Lifts people up. Like it's a lot better having her in the room when she is there than when she isn't there. It's it's all those stories. But something that you said reminded me of this. Doing a gig with Adam Curry from Candlebox. He's the bass player. Really great
I fuck
guy.
with Candlebox.
Yeah, really great guy, nice guy. He was telling me a story about he had set up, because he had talked about how he's done a bunch of gigs to survive in the music business. So when he's not on tour as a bass player, he can run sound, he can fix guitars, just whatever, he can fill his income with when he's not touring. He was telling me a story about setting up a small sound system for Paul McCartney doing like a book signing or a Q&A kind of a thing. So basically like small PA, he's doing a lecture or something like that. Paul goes around in the room after the event is done, thanks everybody, literally sees him going like this, like, did I forget anybody? Makes eye contact with him, goes up to him and goes, hey, I just want to say thanks for everything. And like, just like goes out of his way to like, hey, thank you so much for like helping make this happen. And he goes, if Paul McCartney could take the time to thank the guy who just set up the PA, with like a microphone or whatever, it's like, I can.
Exactly.
It's like nobody is allowed to be an asshole and treat people like shit when it's like he was like super nice and like set the bar really high,
Somebody, because my most recent awesome session was with Bono.
Mm.
And
that looked like you were having a fun time.
Yeah.
Right?
who is also incredibly nice and down to earth. But after that had happened, I was talking with my friend who's also a really great engineer. And he's like, you work with Bono? And I was just like, yeah. And he's like, I worked with Bono. And then he told me this Bono story that kind of relates to yours.
Okay.
He was in the studio and everybody had left, right? He was kind of wrapping up cables or whatever. And Bono had gone around thanking everyone, saying goodbye. But he didn't get to my buddy, Chris, right? Because they just didn't see each other or whatever.
Right.
And then Bono leaves. And then like literally like 20 minutes later, the receptionist of the studio pitched them in. And they're like, hey, you guys, just to let you know, Bono's coming back. And they're like, what?
What?
What's happening? He comes back, finds Chris, and he's like, hey, man, I didn't get a chance to thank you and say bye. So thank you for everything you did today. You did great. Blah, 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 blah. Thank you so much. Good to meet you. And then he turned around. So he literally left the studio, drove a bunch, turned around, and came back in just to say bye to the one person in the crew of that day that he missed.
Yeah.
That's
So
the
if you're
secret.
Bono and you know what I mean?
Right.
That's the secret. It's so nice. He didn't need to do that.
No.
But that's the kind of thing. But then you get people who, all of a sudden have, 30,000 Spotify plays. And they think that, that they can walk all over everybody. And those people I just don't want to work with.
Yeah. No, I feel you on that, man. Totally. And it's also, I've met people too that they've started off doing sort of stagehand work, or they started off doing, I guess, work that could be considered by certain people like lower on the totem pole. And then they get opportunities to play and be in bands. And those people are incredibly humble because, they didn't automatically start off with success. They kind of worked at it and they ended up in a position where they are living their dream, and not sarcastically, they're living the dream literally.
Yeah.
And those people are incredibly nice and humble because they were in your shoes once, so they're not going to treat you like shit. It's the same people that if you've worked in the food industry, you don't be mean to your waiters. You know,
Exactly.
It's just
Exactly.
you've been there. You know, you've been there, done that. Yeah.
Or when you taste something funny in your food, don't be so damn surprised. It's
Yeah.
like you were rude.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
put some shit in there.
Exactly. And but speaking of the Instagram though, because I saw the Bono picture on there, I also saw a picture of you.
I clapped, by the way. I like clapped when I saw that.
Yeah.
I was like, there were two pictures. I was like, holy shit.
Yeah.
One, I just said holy shit a bunch of times, and then that one I clapped because I was like, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fucking
well-
Bono.
well,
Bono, you rule.
I felt that about the John Legend picture, you know, too, where I was like, yeah,
Okay, so that was crazy because at the time, so here at the studio, there is a detached room. It's like, it used to be a detached garage, and that's like another little tiny writing mixing room back there.
yeah,
And at the time, Linda was letting this producer, his name is Troy Noka,
Okay.
he was working out of that room. He was there every day. And I knew John was in there with him. Like, I knew he was here, you know. John Legend shows up, you know. But, you know, he's over there with John. And I get this text from Troy. And he's like, hey, are you still here? And I'm just like, yeah. And he's like, do you want to maybe, like, help me cut these vocals? It's like, yeah, are you serious? Yeah. And let me tell you something. That dude is loud.
really,
How loud?
He projects. I couldn't be in the room while he was singing. Like,
Wow.
it's like so much power in that voice, so much
Wow.
projection. It's like, and you know, you're doing this, you only get one shot, you know what I mean? Like, he's walking in and he, you know, it's like whatever, 9-10 p.m. That's your only chance to capture it. So I had a U47, which is a very fancy microphone, and I asked him what he normally used. He said U47, so I was like, okay, great, already winning. And then he tells me, he's like, I'm loud, so you do whatever you have to do to adjust to that. So he gives me the heads up. I have the microphone or the mic pre at its lowest setting, right? And he starts singing, and it's distorting.
whoa,
And I'm just like, whoa.
that's
And
impressive.
so that's the terrifying moment where you have to just be like, hey, John, can you like take a step back? You know?
Right, yeah, like, hey,
'Cause
if
the
you
microphone
wouldn't
is-
mind so
Yeah.
much, yeah,
Yeah. But at the end, it turned out great, you know?
cool.
That was a fun day.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Well,
man.
Yeah.
I wanted to bring that up to talk about that, but the one I actually had in mind, because I didn't want to exclude the John Legend picture, but the one that leads me to my next question is I saw you doing a headstand with Natasha Bedingfield, which was awesome.
That's fun.
And you kind of nailed it earlier with not being fluid or so stuck in your ways, because before we even had this conversation today, I saw that picture and went, if you were a stuffy or stuck in your ways engineer, you wouldn't be doing a headstand on the floor with Natasha. That's just like, that's not your personality or vibe. Because it doesn't matter, like we were mentioning, working with artists, you learn their preferences and you learn how they want things done. You learn all the ins and outs of doing that. And with that moment, it kind of reminded me, like, for you, or I guess I should say for you, when you're working with all these different people, so you know Linda by now because of the time, but when you get thrown in a session like, hey, record these vocals for John Legend,
John
or
freaking Legend.
or you're working with Bono or things like that, you still have to adapt kind of on the fly to what they want and their preferences, and you're still trying to go for their goals. So
Absolutely.
how is that skill set developed for you to where you can go with the flow of like, and again, not even in the technical, but like, hey, Natasha wants to teach you how to do a headstand, so you're like willing to roll with it and just go with the flow to make the vibe happen.
Well, with Natasha's particularly, we were doing a full-length album, so I got to spend a lot of time
Right.
with Natasha, and she's also incredibly nice and just an incredible person, and we got along great, you know. And after you're spending hours and hours and hours with people, you get to know them, you know.
Yep.
And like you said, Natasha's a very particular. She's a killer singer. She's incredible. Everybody has their personal preferences. So they're always the first day, you're just kind of going like, after dealing with so many different singers, you kind of start getting an idea of how things are going to go. It's like, oh, okay, you know, some people, let's say you do the first verse and now you want to do the chorus, right? Some people just want to hear what they sang so far and then come in on the chorus, you know?
Right.
Some people want to be able to sing along to themselves and hear themselves live and the pre-recorded one to come into the chorus. Some people, you know, some people just want to go down the song and comp as they go. So they'll sing only the first verse until the first verse is perfect, exactly the way they want it. Then they'll do the chorus. Then they'll do the second verse. Then they'll do the third one. Some people want to sing the song from top to bottom 15 times and then listen to all the takes and pick the pieces that they like and piece them together after. So it's like you adapt, you know?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so it's like, okay, how is this gonna go? What kind of situation am I walking into? And when you don't know at first, it can be not awkward, but you're just like, oh, you know, what do you mean? Oh, you just want it like this. Oh, okay, I can do that. And
Cool.
Yeah. Do you have to do a lot of translating for artist speak where it's like, you know, they're not throwing out technical terms about EQ or maybe a production, but you have to sort of translate that?
yeah,
Yeah.
that's a daily thing. Everybody has different terminology.
Yeah.
I think it happened to Max. One time I brought him to the studio to play a Rhodes solo for a Christina Aguilera track.
Whoa.
And so Linda, I think she was just fucking with Max. She would go on the talk bench. She's like, I need like a Nashville solo. And he'll do a take. And she's like, yeah, that was good, but more Mississippi. Yeah, but can you try it a little more like Phoenix, Arizona?
Like Phoenix.
All right. Well, Phoenix is warmer, so what's a warm frequency?
Yeah,
I guess that's
What?
a little more mids
Yeah.
on there. Yeah. Now that's, I don't know. To me, that's kind of, if someone's like cool and flexible about that kind of stuff, to me, that's kind of the fun of like figuring out what that is, you know? Because
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, that's very fun.
yeah, it happens in live sound less, but it can happen sometimes. Like, hey, can you make this more whatever, you know? And like, usually it's just make it sound good, no feedback, clarity. But sometimes people want specific stuff, you know?
I gotta tell you, I'm terrified of live sound. I can't.
What?
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just like what you do, but not as good sound quality. Same thing, bro.
I don't know, man.
I don't know. I'm so used to it, and it's the one thing I wish that you could do more of, and I think you can if you work for a specific artist all the time, but it's more utilitarian in the sense of you have like a really concrete, like we only get a finite amount of time for sound check, and you have to
Right.
kinda just do it. And then especially like when I first started out, it was all DIY stuff, so it was like, you know, mixing bands like touring indie and punk bands and things like that, and so we had The Garden come through, and so that was like an interesting experience. And we've had Voodoo Glow Skulls and The Casualties and like bands that have been around forever, but they're like, you know, punk bands and stuff. So
Hell yeah, they are.
it's less about like, you know, hey, making this sound as perfect as possible, and like, hey, just making sure that your
Make it-
equipment doesn't die, and
Make
like,
it loud.
well, yeah, and it's like, can you still understand everything that the vocalist is singing about over the amps in the
Yeah.
room? And
Don't shock anyone.
Yeah, exactly. And as that went on, and I did better gigs, and you know, got to work in a theater and be on the house crew for that. It's like, okay, well, I don't know. That was more of like being an assistant engineer in that respect. So I was like miking a stage and having to like set up a stage plot really, really fast, because before we had digital gear, there's a touring company called Flag Systems that we would rent our consoles from. And that came with 2 engineers for, you know, one for the front of house, one for the monitors. And they
Right.
would be the sort of techs. They would be either mixing the bands, or they would be getting the band's touring crew, you know, comfortable with the gear if they weren't. So,
Right.
but they for, let's say for argument, they're the engineers that day. They're handing me a stage plot and saying go, and I have to go, okay, read it and have everything set up, making sure my signal flow is right, having a clean stage within maybe I don't know, like a really short amount of time of like them handing it to me. And
Yeah.
it only takes a couple times of them going like, why isn't that overhead run already? And they're not being mean, but they're just used to tour speed. And I was on house crew speed, of like, all right, I'm, doing this. And they're like, why aren't you patched in yet? And not even being mean, but they're trying to get me up to their level. So they're just not pulling any punches with me. And so it's a little bit more utilitarian in that, like, you're like, go, go, go. Like, we're doing this right now. And I envy that environment where you can be creative and spend more time on like getting the perfect sound, and that to me is like a blessing to be able to do that.
Yeah, I mean, it's different. See, to me, whenever I go see a show, especially on festivals, there's like that kick drum sound. You know what I'm talking about? All the kick drums in all the festivals sound the same. And it's just like, that's what you're trying to achieve. You're trying to get all these different drums to just sound the same.
Yeah. Right.
Live. And that just seems like so like weird to me. I don't know. I wouldn't want to. I just wouldn't. I don't get it. It's just not for me, I guess.
Well, it's
not the first time we heard this from a studio expert either.
Yeah.
The live versus studio context is
right. And I don't know. There's a sick part of my brain that likes the what if something goes wrong as much
there's
as
a lot of
stresses
sick parts
me
of your
out.
brain that want things to go wrong.
Yeah. There's something about, and this is on the backline side of it.
Yeah.
We were doing one of the rock fantasy camp gigs I was doing. Zach Wilde was the headliner, and he was. We were playing at the Whiskey. For one of the bands, he did his traditional going out in the audience with doing a solo and guitar behind his back and doing the Hendrix thing. And like Hendrix, who Zach Wilde loves, he had a long 100-foot lead on his guitar. He didn't have a wireless. So he was going like really old school. His tech, I think, like me and the other stage tech were watching the stage because I think his tech was... tuning guitars and like handling his gear. So we were just watching Zach to make sure nothing went wrong. Zach goes out in the audience. His cable is like starting to get caught on itself and it's going to unplug from the pedal board. So me and Alan, the other tech, see this. He jumps after Zach to make sure his cable doesn't get tripped up on anybody in the audience. I jump on the board to make sure the cable gets unraveled.
Just hold it in there.
I'm praying to God there's not a knot in this thing and it's just caught on itself. And so I'm feeding it out and I'm literally just panicked, like, oh fuck, because I don't want his guitar to come unplugged mid solo, right? I'm doing all that, and he gets to the end, and he's still walking, and there's no more cable, and I'm going like, oh, I hope he knows, and he's not just like running out in the audience. As I'm panicking, I start smiling and laughing to myself as this is going on because it's such an absurd situation.
Sure.
And so there's something about me that loves like the impulsivity of like live performance and likes sort of the craziness of it to a certain extent. Like, I think working in a studio would be great, but I've just been doing live stuff for so long that it's just, I don't know, there's something fun about like, fingers crossed, is this going to go right? And then, if it does, then you're like, I don't know. And even if it doesn't, I don't know, you learn from it and you end up going home at the end of the day. Nobody died, so it's all good.
Shouldn't have killed anybody. It shouldn't have.
Yeah.
It's different in a studio because, at least in this one, most of the equipment that I use, except for the computer, is like 60 years old.
Yeah.
So it's like, it just dies. They just die. Or noises show up, things go wrong.
Yeah.
And so it's a constant, like,
yeah,
can't use that compressor anymore. Gotta go send it get repaired, switch it to this one.
Right. Yeah.
And it's very finicky. Whereas I feel like live sounds more sturdy. Like, you plug it in and most likely than not, it's just going to work even if it falls off the stage.
Yeah. Hopefully.
Whereas,
yeah.
Hopefully. Most of the things. Whereas here, everything's just so delicate.
Yeah. It's definitely the gear is built for the road. And also whether it's backline, not necessarily PA, but I feel like the PA stuff, if you're in a good situation, it's pretty sturdy. But backline and anything you're bringing out on the road is going to be pretty roadworthy and durable. And you're not bringing, sometimes depending on the artist, they'll do it, but they're not bringing super valuable vintage guitars. They're kind of bringing their roadworthy gear. Within the past couple of years, I've done gigs with Lita Ford, and it's so funny because with Lita, she plays her guitars that she's played forever. So one of the main ones she uses on stage is her Hamer's Explorer that she's had since the Runaways.
Sick.
And it's like serial number like below 50. I don't remember exactly which one it is, but it's like one of the first they made. And she's like, this is my guitar. This is what I use. And to me, I would be so precious of that. Like, I've had this guitar since in my teens, but she's just, she's awesome. I love working with her, but she's like, and, with like helping, like, I know their crew and have kind of gotten into their camp. And so I've helping them with like LA gigs and local gigs and things like that. And so whenever I've done gigs with her, she's always has those guitars or like famous guitars she's had since the 80s. And normally an artist would try to get a replica done of like that guitar. And it's like, I'll take it to Hamer or somebody and they can build me an exact copy of this. But it's
that
like,
I take touring.
But she's just like, this is my guitar. This is what I use. And I respect that just because it's the same with using that old gear. It's just like, it has a certain sound and I love playing it. And I'm going to use it despite any sort of sentimental value that it might have for me.
Well, Rick Nielsen from Cheap Trick had to, he was taking 50 one-of-a-kind guitars on tour that he owns since whatever.
Yep.
And he had to stop because I guess the story is that the insurance on his guitars was so high that he was just losing money on tours.
Wow. I believe it.
So they were like, you need to stop that. Just get yourself a couple replicas, some touring guitars, and leave those at home, please, so that we can all like make money.
Yeah. Well, and
that's wild.
I think it's interesting because you have to look at stuff like that with gear. It's not just the value of the equipment, but it's also like who's playing it. So some of those guitars alone, just because of the rarity of them, could be in.
And for those who don't know, Rick Nielsen played a 5-neck guitar. It was not. It was not standard issue for those who were just cruising here. And not really in it.
And one of the last camps I did, Cheap Trick. I was going to say most of the members of Cheap Trick.
You went to Camp Cheap Trick?
Yeah, I did. I got to play with them on stage, too. That's also an interesting story. But
nice.
That was being at the right place and the right time and getting to fill in for somebody that didn't show up. But,
wow.
So, but it was funny because he had a couple of his vintage guitars there. So he had an old Hamer and a couple things. But it's like those guys are just so rock and roll and have been doing it for so long. They're all really cool people. So, like, Tom was there, Tom Peterson, the bass player, Rick, and everybody was there. Like
Tom Peterson is also incredibly nice.
Oh, dude, yeah. He's so cool, so awesome.
He's the only one of Cheap Trick that I've met. Actually, I met him in Nashville.
Yeah.
Well, and he's so nice.
They're all great. And Robin Zander's super cool singer. Like his sound check was the best that day. He comes out, literally has an old Vox amp, an old Rickenbacker guitar, played like a chord and just strummed it, and he went, yep, and he handed it back to his tech, and he's like, I'm just gonna do this.
Man.
Yeah, and it was like, dude, these guys are so rock and roll that it's like
I heard a sound.
What?
He's like, I heard a sound. Good to go.
Yeah, it was like it was loud and it sounded like rock. I'm happy. It's like, dude, you are the man.
Okay.
And I don't know, it was just cool because like, seeing them in that environment and like talking about like all this stuff, like people might look at it like, with the gear, like, oh man, it's like, why would you use these certain things or do this? But it's kind of like they've been doing things this way for so long that it's like, it's just ingrained in them at this point, and that's how they get the sounds that they have. And it's another one of those situations where like they've developed this method of their own way of doing things. And like, while it might be more practical to like, I don't know if I should take all these old Hamers and guitars out on the road. It's like, but that's my guitar. You see the cool checkerboard pattern on it? That's my guitar. And I don't know. I just love seeing stuff like that, and just like it inspires me so much, like as a musician and everything else that I do. And I'm sure you're the same way too.
I have a Venezuelan Quattro, which is kind of like a weird ukulele thing that's traditional down there.
Okay.
And I have a couple, but there's one that one is just the one for me. It's the only, like guitars, I don't really care about guitars. I go through them, buying them and selling them and trading them. And I don't really, I never had a guitar that I had like an emotional attachment to.
Right.
But with this Venezuelan Quattro, that's just the one for me. And if I were to ever have to do a tour where I played Venezuelan Quattro, I would leave it at home.
Yeah.
I would be terrified to bring that thing on the road
Yeah.
and smash it or lose it or something. Like I couldn't.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel you on that. I'm the
That's
same way.
funny.
Yeah.
Well, that's how I feel about my first electric, my old Ibanez. Is like it is by far the least valuable guitar in my collection at this point, and the only one I couldn't stand to lose because I don't know how to replace it. I'm a lefty. It's from the 80s. It's a weird off model that wasn't made a lot, so there's just too much rarity in it. And the way it plays, it hurts me to play it, and it makes me come up with amazing shit. I can't get over this guitar.
Right.
And it's hard to call, like, is it emotional attachment? Yeah, it is. I named this one, which I haven't done with a lot of other things. But I think that's my end of it is, like,
Yeah.
if there's one thing I could never take anywhere, it's my beat-up piece of shit first electric.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some cats out there who feel like that, too, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Like Willie and Trigger, man.
Oh, man.
Come
That
on,
guitar.
son. That shit is basically a toothpick with some strings hanging off of it. He's just whittled that shit to death.
That was, I was going to say, at the theater I work at, that was the first big show I ever worked, was being local crew for that. And just walking by the guitar boat, and it's like I think it was like a 5-space boat.
Yeah.
One guitar in
Right?
the dead center. And
Don't
I was
breathe
like,
on it.
that is the coolest fucking thing. Yeah.
Bro,
Don't go
I'm gonna ask
near
that
it.
guitar for its fucking autograph. Just
Yeah.
sit there like an idiot.
Yeah. Yeah. But, and with that show, I learned a really important lesson about it too, which I think we kind of touched on earlier, is that he's had the same crew for 30 years. And I think it was one of the backline techs told me he went out for a weekend and he never went home. And that was like, whoa.
That's intense.
Yeah, it is intense. And, looking at your situation, it's like you've been there for a long time now. And, it's having that camaraderie, I think, just makes for such a better environment than if it was just all new people all the time. Aside from just the, technical aspects of that or preferences. And I think with something about that, I mean, not necessarily with Linda, but with other people that you work in the studio with, do you get to the point where there's sort of like just unspoken communication and like just you're going off of like body language? Because that
Yes.
happens a lot in live, I think.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. I think the only time that it's been pointed out to me, I was sitting here where I'm sitting, and Linda was behind me here, and she was trying to come up with a guitar part, and I'm, on Pro Tools, and we record a take, and then she will start practicing, and I can already kind of tell where she's trying to get to, like I can hear what the part is going to be, and she's figuring it out, and she's figuring it out, and she's figuring it out, and then all of a sudden it's like, there it is, and she didn't have to say anything. I was just like, oh, she's there, record.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And just,
right.
and then she takes it down. And then afterwards, it's like, dude, she didn't even have to tell you to press record. You just knew when to do it.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, it does happen like that,
Yep.
Do you think that's a function of your guitar playing? Like your musicianship might come into play there more than usual in instances like that?
Yes.
Or do you think it's an engineering thing? What do you think?
I think that's a musicianship thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'd say so.
Because you are one sick guitarist.
Oh, thank you.
Just
Yes.
we're not gonna not put that on the goddamn table.
Yeah.
Whap. Luis plays guitar. So when he says he understood where the part was going, like he understood where the part was going, like what she was aiming for.
Luis
there's no other way to say it.
Luis kills the guitar. It's like anytime I've been fortunate enough to hear you play, man.
And that's why the lack of emotional attachment, because of all the murder. Oh. We just profiled you, big dog.
No, it's like whenever I've heard you play, like, aside from being an assistant engineer, I think that like I would consider you like a producer too, because anytime I've ever heard you play guitar or in any gigging context, it's always just been so tasty, or if
Thank you.
And it's just, to me, it's like I hear you play and I think like, wow, you have the mindset and ears of an engineer, but also a producer at the same time. Like, you know exactly like what to play when it needs to be played.
It's about serving the music and not yourself.
Absolutely.
That's the hard balance.
Yeah.
Because it's like you spend all this time building these chops, you know what I mean? To like play all these things, but if the song doesn't need it, then you're just like jacking off all over it. It's not good. You know what I mean? Like unless it's what it needs, it's not good. So it's about reeling yourself back and just coming up with tasty parts that feel good and
Yeah.
service the song and not just showcasing your skill. You know, it's
Right.
not about being 100% at all times. Because if you just start at 100%, then you're like, I don't know, have nowhere else to go.
Yeah.
Absolutely, bro. I feel now more than ever because we're post technical shred, you know, like that was many decades behind us, and now, like, you know, anybody in any given context can shred the fuck out of the guitar lick, but it's like it's getting harder and harder for that to matter when I hear it. You know what I mean? It's like I don't want a flurry of notes unless it really has. It's completely intentional and
Yeah.
completely resonates through all the music that's going on in that moment.
Yeah.
So that really fucking sunk in with me.
Which is where my guitar playing has changed since having this job. Understanding that a little better. Like I said, when I first started, it had to be complicated. It had to be, you know, thick. It had to be intellectual in that way, you know,
Right.
for me to like it. And now I prefer simple parts that are effective over dexterity.
Right. And you can, having your prog background and wanting it to be weird and abstract or technical, you can always reapply those things whenever they're necessary. But now,
Exactly.
if you're starting your 60 or 70% of like having more headroom of like stuff you can play is going to be so much further than somebody else's, you know, as far as like whatever their 60 to 70% of what they can play, because you have those other skill sets available.
Right. And it's about not being inside yourself but being in the music. It's a very collaborative thing for me. Music, it's, even though I play classical guitar mainly, which is a solo thing, for me the funnest part of music is the other people you get to make it with,
Right.
because it brings that out, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, it's at best it's, you know, a collaborative sort of, you know, more of a family type of feel where it's like we're all in this together and we're all serving this bigger thing, you know. That's when I feel it's at its best in any situation, live, making songs, whatever it is. Everybody's on the same page, like going for this higher thing of like, you know, we want this to be as best as we can, so we're going to really like push it, you know. We want to like push ourselves on this. We want to really grind on these songs. We want to
Grind it.
yeah, have the best production that we can, and you know, all those
Yeah.
different things.
I think that's real.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I'm sure the standard for you too, it's you're dealing with the best of the best all the time, so your standard of what you would accept in yourself and your playing and all of that is a lot higher than. And not saying it wouldn't be before, but it teaches you not to settle for something and to say, "Ah, that's close enough." You know, you want to nail it and be happy with it.
Yeah.
That was fine.
Yeah, yeah,
And that's something that I've learned in this environment is two things. One, you always have to be prepared to do your best in the first chance you get. No do-overs.
yeah.
You know, a lot of people are okay with like, oh, we're just here tonight hanging out. No pressure. I'll just kind of throw this mic over there without a care in the world. And if it sucks, we'll fix it later. I can't think like that. It has to be, you know, because when you have Dolly Parton in front of you, you have to try to get the best vocal you get from the get-go. You don't know if you're going to get Dolly Parton in your studio again. She may
Yeah.
only have today to sing,
Right.
you know, because she's going on tour for the next 9 months. Who knows, you know? Not
Yeah.
Dolly, but, you know, a different artist.
Yeah, could be anybody.
Or whatever's happening. Or John Legend, for example, that was the only night I saw him.
Right.
So if I didn't get a good vocal that shot, he's not going to get another try tomorrow. I can't, you know. So there's that. And also the part of the emotion itself, because when he's writing a song, you know, when you're writing a song with someone, it is an emotion. It is a very therapeutic thing that's happening for the people involved, and the second you write it is the best time to capture that emotion because of your mental state that you're in when you wrote the song. You're not going to be in that same mental state and in that same place yourself a week from now if you try to sing the song again. It's
Right.
not going to have
Yeah.
the same emotion. Just like, you know, your solo is not going to have the same emotion when you're first coming up with it than when you've practiced it 50 times. It's
Oh,
it's
God.
you know, it's this raw human thing that happens the moment of that, and that's what I want to capture.
yeah.
I don't want to have to try again next week when everything's changed, and you know,
Yeah.
and nobody's in the same place. It's the vibe and the emotion of the moment that you're having, and capturing that moment as best as you can.
That
Yeah.
resonates.
There's been so many times with my band where our lead singer Casey, she'll write a piece and she'll have a demo version of the song just on her phone, like, hey, this is the chord changes and the melody and the idea, and we'll take it and add parts to it as a band. But there's been certain times where we have to try to capture the same emotion later and like put the same feeling into what that demo version may have been, you know.
And it's difficult to do that.
Yeah, and it's difficult, and it's another skill set you have to, obtain of, being able to how emotion translates when you play something, and
Exactly.
and that's having that ability to just record something on the spot. Like I think a couple of years ago there was a Prince album that came out of all demos. And it was like either alternate takes or demos of songs that he did. And he had Purple Rain on one of them. It was just him working it out on piano.
Yeah.
Very free form, like he's messing with the melody. And I was like, oh, I really love this, like way more than the original song. Because it's him just in his element, not worried about the constraints of like time or like melody, or is this going to sound good? He's just playing and being himself. And I'm like, this is my favorite thing he's ever done now. Or... It
is like that. Or sometimes, you're in the studio and it's just a writing session, not necessarily producing a record or whatever. And it's something that it's going to get produced later,
Yeah.
So it's just a piano and a vocal, and then later on, but it's happened a couple times where you get the song that's just solo piano and vocal, and then later on you try to produce it and you record the piano again, and there's drums and bass and guitars and stuff, and it doesn't beat the demo. It's just not as good. And then that demo that you recorded that night where you weren't paying attention to the mics or the quality or whatever, that's what goes in the album. So that's why it's always important to try to get the best recording you can the day off.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree. It's like you said, just being on your A game and being prepared to like do your best at all times and not, letting anything slip through the cracks.
Yeah. I'm feeling the commonality between that and the live situation, because having spent a lot more of my life just performing live and that sort of thing, that's that moment of kind of situation. That's how I always translated the live playing context, is like it's all about trying to connect with people, less than maybe the quality of what the music sounds like overall, because you can only hear from so much in that position, but definitely about like, are we connecting with each other? Is that connection coming across? And if not, why not? You know what I mean? I feel that when you were talking about earlier about setting up to record and get in that moment, because you won't have another chance to do it the same way with the same energy.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. And this is
Don't you point at me.
One of my I'm waving my finger like an old man. One of my biggest pet peeves is people who, because like live music and performing live is about just a passion of mine, as far as like just what I love doing and what I love being involved in, working in it, playing gigs. I think the thing that people take for granted is, unlike a recording where everybody feels self-conscious and they're under a microscope and this is going to last forever, like that whole thing, no matter what artist you are, it's like we're putting this out into the world. You can hear it over and over again. People take way more pressure into doing that than to do a live gig. And so many times when people don't put as much effort into like performance or how a show comes across, or just even like remembering the songs to play them well live in certain situations, or getting too inebriated to play, it's live, it's fine. It's like, it's good enough for live. And it's like, yeah, but live is like, it's a spontaneous, magical thing. And people are investing that, like, I'm going to get something out of going to this experience. And so the commonality, I think, is that whether it's a recording or a live session, they're both like, I look at it like a Swiss watch analogy. Like, if you look at a watch...
You're obsessed with those things.
Well, yeah, for not wearing one. If you were to look at a watch, right, there's all these small little moving parts that make up what that thing is.
Yeah.
And you could look at it like, oh, are those small, insignificant portions of this thing? No, they're intricate pieces that make this whole thing function. So the devil is in the details, and details aren't insignificant. is how I look at it. And people overlook that stuff with live performance all the time. And where the commonality, I think, is like, hey, we only have this one show, even if we're on tour, and we only have this one audience. So, like, let's make this as good as we possibly can.
I absolutely agree with you.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if your audience is at home listening to headphones or they're in the audience, like, live. It's the same thing. You want to do your best work. It's your craft, you know?
Yeah, and I mean, it's funny because also in recording, there's the other side of the coin where a lot of my favorite records are technically very poorly recorded and borderline unlistenable, and that's okay. I can listen to some, like, shitty punk record all I want.
Yeah.
That was just, you know, like screaming into a tape deck in someone's basement.
Yeah.
You said that, I thought of the Germs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like one of my favorite bands that sounds so bad.
Yeah, but a brilliant
Exactly.
record.
Fucking A, brilliant record.
But I usually can't get over a bad show. Like, if I see someone play a bad show, it's just like, I don't know.
But again, I would make the correlation too that if you go and see a band like that live, you're expecting a certain kind of performance that, like, you're not necessarily looking for the super tightest thing, or you're looking for, like, the same technicality. Like, you're not getting the baked potato when you go and see a screaming punk band.
Right. Exactly.
But you're going to get your energy out. You're going to get some sort of intensity out of it. A really fun show. Like, I've been wanting to see the Vandals Christmas show that they do every year for years, and I haven't had a chance to go yet. But if I go see them, I'm expecting a fun, great time, you know, when I go and see them. And they're super tight, but it's not a virtuosic sort of performance. I'm going to just let loose and have fun and hear these songs. If I'm going to the Baked Potato, I want to see these masters of their instrument and their craft let loose, like unfiltered, and like, hey, let's hear these, you know, you play your instrument without any sort of cap on, like, what is too much, you know, like give me everything you have, and not necessarily, you know, whatever it is. And so, but all of those things are still good shows, in the same way that, like, you can have a punk record that's not technically perfect and have this other record that is absolutely technically perfect. Both of them hit some sort of emotional core that, you know, is equally valid.
It's like jumping from the Germs to Steely Dan.
Yeah. And the reason why I love talking with people like you is because you appreciate the validity of both. Like,
both. Exactly.
Yeah, Asia is just as valid as the Germs. And it's like, those are two, that's sort of like putting peanut butter and, you know, tuna fish together. You wouldn't necessarily want to.
Am I smelling a remix?
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, you know, those, do they blend stylistically? Not necessarily.
Think so.
But it's, you know, it's something to where you can appreciate them both for the same reason.
Exactly.
You know? Yeah.
No, you're right.
And sometimes you need one and sometimes you need the other.
Yeah.
What was that?
Sometimes you need one and sometimes you need the other, depending on where you're at, too.
Yeah.
Yeah. For me, I can never get away from my appreciation for funk music and anything. So, like, I'm a huge James Brown fan. And so when I go and see a band and they've got their hits locked in and they're going from song to song and it's just like razor sharp tight, I appreciate that no matter what it is. And so when I see a band do that and they're just nailing it, I'm like, this is the best. This is James Brown with no horns. This is great, you know. And it's just,
I didn't realize he had horns.
Yeah, they're the guys doing
vestigial things.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Exactly. The more you know. Sorry.
Man. No,
Not sorry. I just say that reflexively. I'm actually not sorry.
Yeah, you shouldn't
That's
be.
weird. I'm not.
Well, Louis, we really appreciate you coming in here, man, and taking the time to talk to us. This was so awesome, and it's you know, to get a little bit personal, I just consider myself honored and humbled to know people like yourself and get to have these conversations and gain some wisdom from them. And the fact that you did this on this podcast means a lot. So thank you so much.
You, buddy.
It's really awesome.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah. Is there any final bits that you wanted to say, kind of wrapping up, and, you know,
anything you need to promote,
anything you want to plug, or
aggrandize?
Just, anything you
political
want to say.
platform you need to get on real quick.
No, I'd rather not.
Smart man.
Yeah.
Hey man, are you still working on the viola?
Yeah.
I had to put you on the
Yes.
spot because when me and Max came and picked up the amp from you, like, God, was that like a year and a half ago already?
Yeah.
You were like just starting to get into it or something.
Oh man.
I am. I'm supposed to record my first viola part that I wrote for something that I'm gonna play and record it.
Dude.
In the next couple of weeks. I already have the parts written,
Sweet.
but it's really hard
Because of no frets or.
because of no frets and like
Yeah.
sideways and so basically I play viola with auto-tune on. And
That's
it
all right.
works. It works great.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, there's no rules, man. You know, that's do your thing.
At least till I can
There's
get
nothing-
better. Because
Yeah.
if I wanted to actually get better, I would have to not practice. Because you work in a studio, you get home. I don't have the energy or all day to practice. 3 different instruments. So like guitar is
Sure.
like my thing. So I'm making sure
Right.
that I practice guitar, and then I do a little viola here and there. But if I wanted to actually get good at it to the point where I'm like in tune, I would just have to like abandon everything else and only play viola. 2 hours a day for the next like year, and I'm just not gonna do that. So auto-tune it is.
Yeah.
I feel.
I did see someone who sells viola like fretboards, like with frets,
Oh, lay that shit on there. Yeah, boy.
Well,
and I'm
That's
thinking
money.
about it. I'm
That's just like
thinking
that
about it.
6-string banjo that's really a guitar. I'm like, get that. Do that.
I'm thinking about it. I'm not gonna lie.
Right on.
well, and this has kind of given me an idea of being a fan of bands like Zapp and Roger, and with that whole sort of that whole pre-auto tune vibe, and even like T-Pain. It's like I would want to hear what that viola sounds like with the auto tune at like T-Pain level of craziness, to where it just sounds like a vocoder.
Yeah.
Like I don't know, that could be cool in like
It
an
could be
R&B
cool.
track.
It could be cool. I haven't gone that far, but I might try it. Why not?
I don't know,
Oh, yeah.
man. I think that's you might just stumbled on a really cool idea there. I don't know.
I was like, now when he's engineering stuff, he's like, how about we track some viola on here?
Yeah, like, I'm
every
hearing-
Yeah.
I'm hearing like take a line you would play on a mini Moog and then play it on like a viola with a little bit more of that kind of vibe to it, and then have the auto tune. I don't know.
I don't know. I don't think
don't know.
anyone will ever see me because I'll have my fretted viola of shame that no one's gonna see me play, but you'll hear it someday.
Yeah,
Fuck yeah.
just say it's a Fender Precision viola. And then, yeah,
Wow.
that's how you get out of that.
Fucking A.
Cool, man.
But yeah.
Thank you so much, and I hope we get to do this again sometime down the road. I think this is a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Hopefully
Yeah, we
in
will,
person
as long as we
someday.
all stay alive, Jesse.
Yeah, I hope
Yeah.
so.
No.
Cool, man.
Good
All
to
right.
see you, dude.
Thank
Thank
you
you
so much.
brother.
Good to see you guys. See you later. Bye, Max.
He waved his hand.
Because you know,
Silent. That's jarring.
because he plays the keys,
I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. and he fades into music.
That was Max. This is Max you're doing right
Yeah.
now. Okay.
It's
got
Max
it.
playing keys.
Got it.
Yeah, no, that's Max playing keys from the
Weird.
song we just heard.
I feel that. Okay.
Yeah, clearly I'm in a different instrument with.
I play with him so much, I don't remember that much shimmy, but I think I must have not been paying that much attention.
I love being in bands and groups with people and imitating their instrument and pantomiming it horribly. And like, yeah, just play the part and like, drums, and I just look awful doing it.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So are you air instrumenting and like putting extra sauce? Is that what this is?
Yeah, it's if you were like writing and you're in a band, practice space or lockout or whatever, and you're talking to your drummer, and it's like, yeah, if you just play, and you could like play the, you could sound it out with your mouth, like what you want the thing to be.
Wow.
But you're like, yeah, you're gonna do the,
Bow, chicka, bow.
and it's like you're not gonna be going crash snare random wildly like it's the end of the song, but it's a little bit funny if like that's all drum parts to you. Like, hey, get out your brushes and do the the thing.
Yeah,
Like, yeah.
that's like, yeah.
it's the same thing, with bass. It's like, oh yeah, it's like not every part is going to be this.
So now we're getting into this thing because you started to do it where it's like every time you said drums, the gesture happened.
Yeah.
Now, this happens every time. I don't think it has to be a musician, dude. Anytime somebody brings up the friggin' bass, they do like...
Slap at the bass.
Like the bass? Like
Yeah.
the bass, and they get all Paul Rudd with it. And it's
Slap
just
at the
like,
bass, man.
I'm
Yep.
like, that's really great. But what?
Well, I mean, I was about to answer this like you are not a bass player, but you get this just as
I'm
much
not a
as
bass
I
player.
do. Well, I mean, come on now.
Only till that last set. And then I switch with Benny, and then I get to be a guitar player. And that's when everything changes. Because they're like, holy shit, you're a guitar player. You're really good.
Yeah.
The whole night, they just be like, hey, man, good bass playing.
Right.
And that's when I'm
Yeah.
like, why did I ever pick up the stupid bass? So
Well, because you're great at it. You groove like a.
you're great at it. Victor Wooten's great at it.
Well,
Josh
yeah,
Crumbly's great at it.
I wouldn't put me next to either one of those two.
You know who used to
but-
be great at the bass? Jaco Pastorius.
Yeah.
You know who used to be great at the bass? I was trying to think of somebody weird, but nothing came to mind. I'm going to say like Skunk Baxter, but Skunk Baxter probably played the bass.
Well, I was gonna say you say used to, so I was gonna say that's past context.
You know who used to play the bass, but probably doesn't now? Dude who lost his arms. Like any dude who lost his arms.
Oh, you're talking about somebody specific. I'm like, who is this? Why have I not heard it? Why have I not heard of them? But that's also like, I mean, I'm
just so retarded. I'm sorry.
well, that's okay.
I won't apologize.
It's okay. You don't have to apologize.
I know.
That is something that I think, I don't know, is something you actually see in the music world more often than not. I've seen videos of people where they won't have arms or they have lost a hand or anything like that, and they will play their instrument. I found a one-armed drummer on Instagram the other day, and she was like actually playing, like had the drumstick. I think that was it. She was like playing, and basically just if you had closed your eyes, it's like, oh, this is, you wouldn't have guessed otherwise.
No, dude, it's totally true. I've also, because I'm such a YouTube enthusiast, and I'm always looking for music performance clips and stuff, because those are some of my favorite things. And, anything like a 10-year-old kid who could shred is amazing. And it's like I've seen plenty of people who have some sort of physical challenge, let's call them, for lack of a more like a better term, and they fucking rip just like anybody with 2 hands or 3 hands. So yeah. I was just typical tasteless joke, Dave, but you saved it. You made it a think piece.
Well, I read into that more often.
You're a
than I
damn good
should.
journalist, man.
Oh,
You're a journalist on the fly, too, because I'm just like, I'm burning down the outro, and you're like, you know what? We can make this thoughtful. We can take the mutilated butt and just turn it and show the pretty face.
Well, I don't know. I mean, we didn't get into this in the podcast, but
Oh, shit.
sometimes in engineering, you have to turn a mutilated butt into something that's palatable. So that's ideally you never want to do that, but it's sometimes a guitar tone is mutilated butt, and you have to shape that into this is listenable, like in a live sound context. It's like because once it goes past the stage into the audience, they're hearing more of the PA typically than the amp, unless it's loud as fuck. So
You're right.
I don't know. I think it's I don't know. I think it's something thoughtful and profound that I could craft into a think piece. I think
you're well on your way. I'm going to do a hard segue with no preamble except for this, which was to say this is
we
a hard
hold these
segue.
truths to be self-evident. Go ahead.
So, did you know? Also, a quick shout to our dear friend Raylan Janicki. Raylan Janicki, Infrasound Studios. Pete
What up,
Hyman,
Ray?
The whole crew. God bless you, people. So I did the review team. Episode 3's tally is in. Your boy Dave, 61 likes that didn't need to be there. 61 likes out of context. What do you suppose young Jesse Davidson's number was for this particular episode?
If we're doing the jelly bean jar of likes, I'm going to say in the 80s.
So first, I'm going to say you couldn't be further. You need so many more. And also, if I'd counted Ray's, if I'd have counted yours, you would have been the one owing the money. Here's what it is. And I'm gonna do my 61 because this is crazy. 239 likes.
No.
Yeah, you would be shocked how many likes were followed immediately by another like. I almost wanted to go back and be like, put a star on the likes, and there would have been like 30 of those.
Oh, that makes me so sad and upset.
And it was honestly the highlight of my morning because I had so much shit going on at home, and I was like, I'm gonna spend an hour and a half.
239?
Yeah.
You're kidding.
So what I ended up doing was I ended up going 1.5 speed on the episode and realized that we were saying it so much, I had to go back and start over at regular speed. That's how many likes there were. And here's the funny thing. I got to the point where I'm cooking my breakfast and I count my likes. And then when it's your turn to talk, I stop what I'm doing and I ran to grab the pen and paper because I knew I'd be going like.
Oh,
It was great.
For fuck's sake. Take that, whatever you were cooking, and take the hot grease and throw it on me. Good Lord almighty.
Oh, no. There was a lot because my dad made bacon bowls.
That's fine. I was hoping it was bacon. 239 likes?
Yeah, but you shouldn't be that down on yourself. Like, it's a funny thing because, I mean, people, I consume so much of what we do, and there's a lot of likes out there.
Sweet shit, though. I don't want to subject people to that every week. 239 likes.
It was way more than the week before, and I don't think you've even touched it since. This was your like climax.
I think, yeah, it was something.
Yeah.
Well, and I will say this, that I don't care if guests do it at all, because I look at it
They're
as...
guests!
Well, it's a guest. Like
It's a guest!
Yeah, it's a guest. Yeah. If someone's coming on this podcast and they like, I want them to talk how they talk unfiltered. You don't need to clean up how you talk. I look at it as this is something that I want to practice like a instrument, in the sense of I'm not going to alter my personality, but I can work on my speech and my presentation and how I deliver a thought and idea to people, and saying it in a way where I'm cognizant of, say, a listener who listens every week. Again, I don't want to alter my personality. Awkward. It's going to be wacky, waving, inflatable arm man until the end of time. I've decided on that. I can tighten up my speech in the same way I would tighten up a set with a band, or tighten up my playing, work on my timing. You know, like when I'm sitting at home practicing slapping the bass, man. So, oh man, it's yeah. And I will say this: Ray Lynn is a really close, good friend of mine, and we've gotten to know each other over the course of this pandemic, and being stuck at home.
This pandemic or the last one?
Yeah, no, the one in 1920. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
You guys look great. You're so fucking good looking for your age.
Ageless. We both got 2 paintings in our basement that are old and decrepit, but we haven't aged a day.
Oh, Dorian Gray, got it. Okay.
Yeah. There's the reference.
I got really nervous. Like, where's it going with this?
Yeah, but long story short, it's something to where, because I'm like really good friends with her, I let a lot of my filter down, and so there was more like than I would be with, say, a guest that I was only casually acquainted with, as opposed to somebody that, we've been talking like nonstop since March because we're both stuck at home and bored, or we're both whatever the case is. So yeah, it's and I feel that way sometimes when we've had other friends on here, that people I'm comfortable with. So more comfortable I am, the more like tends to pop
right. Up. So the takeaway is clear that friends have ruined our episodes. Friends ruin podcasts.
Absolutely.
They think they're doing us a favor, but when we listen back,
that's the clear takeaway.
Clearly.
No, it's I don't know. It is what it is, and I think I've gotten better. Hopefully, maybe. I don't know.
I'll let you know on the next ep. I'm going to count 4 and 5 before the next one because we got to catch up. And the important thing to remember is that these are coming down to real dollars eventually. So just, if you really want to feel better about it, just remember it's coming out of your pocket.
Oh, my God.
Right?
What's the
full total
now? Do we have a full total?
The full total?
Yeah.
No, because I didn't count yours from the first one because I was just so upset with mine. And yours was minimal. Inside 15, easy on Josh's episode. And there was like none to speak of on Michael's. We both just kind of sat there staring. So.
Well, yeah, it was first recording and first episode.
It was the Virgin Podcast. Thank you for being there, Michael.
Yeah.
We appreciate you.
Maiden voyage. Shout out to Michael.
Yeah. I broke my hymen on that episode. Was that too much?
Hey, it's your journey.
It felt like it. It genuinely did.
It's your journey, and your podcast body is changing.
It is, and it's a beautiful thing.
It is.
It's nature.
It's natural, and we don't shame anybody here. We've had a wide variety of guests. We don't shame anybody.
2020, bitch. It's a new day.
And speaking of a wide variety, we hope there's a wide variety of listeners out there that is enjoying this podcast. Despite
people who stand and listen.
Yeah,
People who sit.
people who beneath the beneath the wacky arms, beneath Batman, know that there is a heart of gold in this podcast that they love and appreciate very much.
Oh, thanks, Garrison Keeler. Oh, that's very sweet.
Yeah.
No, I think that obviously we are very wonderful, down to earth people, and I think that you can see past all of the wackiness and be like, yeah, no, it's just part of like we're relatable. We're just trying to be who we are, and if you don't like it, you're welcome to change the channel. But I think this is a lot of what people are looking for. It's not a channel. It's a weird reference, but
Yeah, it's
analogous to channel changing, though.
well, yeah, there's YouTube channels, and this is one. Which, by the way, if you haven't, please feel free to subscribe and leave.
Why haven't you liked?
Yeah, leave a comment.
Why isn't there a comment?
We want to talk to you people.
I want pushback. I want people to say, talk less. Stop interrupting Jesse. I want some feedback.
We're not sitting over here in our, velvet couch-lined ivory tower. We want to hear in the comments what you think about it, what you like about it. We want to know. We want to hear what our citizens have to say.
We are in our velvet couch-lined ivory tower, though.
But we will.
He meant to say like we would come down to talk to you, but we are in it now and we'll stay in it all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
But we would leave it for you to meet you or whatever.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Bye.
We've
I win again.
Sonic City Council was created by Jesse Davidson and Davey Sipes and engineered by Max Taylor at Desert Sound Studio in Palmdale, California. Thank you to Disaster Cabinet for the outro music. Intro music written by Max Taylor. Sonic City Council is produced in association with Amped Music Academy and the Showcase Venue. For more information, visit theshowcasevenue.com.